Captain Ibrahim Traoré launched the most dangerous raid of his life after a single call revealed the unthinkable. Over 800 people were about to vanish forever, sold like cattle across borders. In the shadows of Ouagadougou, a 500 million CFA trafficking empire was preparing to disappear without a trace. Infants packed in steel containers, pregnant women drugged and tagged, the bodies of children harvested for organs before they even reached puberty, and yet someone at the top of the government knew. So Traoré gave the order that changed everything. Lock the files, trust no one. We move tonight. What followed was a 48-hour manhunt through sandstorms, betrayal, and gunfire. Because if they failed, human life would become a currency no African leader could ever afford to ignore again. The rain in Ouagadougou fell like a warning. Golden streetlights flickered against puddles, casting ghostly shadows across the empty road. A single armored vehicle rolled to a halt. Its door swung open. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped out, his bulletproof jacket soaked but his face unreadable. Inside a dimly lit command room, a voice crackled through the satellite phone. "We've found the nerve center, but you only have 48 hours before they vanish with everything." It wasn't just another operation. It was a race against one of the most profitable human trafficking networks in Africa, valued at over $150 million. From the Sahara's edge to the ports of Libya, they controlled dozens of migration routes, moved hundreds of lives like cargo, and were tied to armed groups from Niger to Sudan. And yet, how did they stay untouched for so long? How many of the children vanishing from northern Burkina Faso never made it to the next sunrise? Captain Traoré didn't flinch. He had seen maps marked with red dots, each one a transit hub. But this wasn't ink, it was blood. Can you dismantle an empire built on flesh in just 2 days? Tonight, the sand would run red. But first, silence. Then, movement. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. And if this story matters to you, subscribe, share, and help us build a new voice for Africa. Thank you for supporting. Inside a low-lit operations room, the air was thick. Not with smoke, but consequence. A large military map lay stretched across the steel table. Thin red pins pierced paper at alarming intervals, tracing a spine of violence through the Sahel. From the dunes of northern Burkina Faso to the chaotic ports of Libya, the red dots weren't just locations, they were evidence. Each of these, the intelligence officer said, his voice low but sharp, is a confirmed staging post. Desert routes, safe houses, sea containers. They move like shadow. Captain Traoré didn't speak. He leaned over the map, his eyes paused where the pin clusters thickened, near Gao, then again at Saba. Why were so many children vanishing near those points? Another officer stepped forward. His fingers trembled slightly as he laid down a brown folder. Satellite confirms what we feared. This isn't just trafficking, they're harvesting organs, infants, pre-teens, split from families and gone within hours. The room went quiet, not shocked, silent, as if oxygen had been drained. How deep did this network go? How many ministers shook hands in daylight and signed contracts in back rooms? One commander cleared his throat. Some names in the leaked finance logs match security officials, active ones. That sentence landed like a blade across the table. Who still inside the Burkinabe military was feeding coordinates to killers? Captain Traoré straightened. His voice was calm but final. From now, everything goes dark. Not a word outside this room. He turned to the communications officer. Encrypt all files. Transfer locations off the grid. No phone traffic unless it's face-to-face. No one leaks this. The officer nodded, already disconnecting terminals. Another general spoke. And if the leak comes from above, from one of us? Captain Traoré looked at him for a long second. Then he'll be arrested like the rest. I don't care what medals they wear. Could a state still function when it was unsure which veins pumped poison? In the back of the room, someone whispered the unspoken. If they have people in our ranks, they already know we're coming. Burkina Faso had seen its share of infiltration. Just months earlier, a coup plot was foiled by intercepting a message sent from Côte d'Ivoire, military-grade precision masked as political rebellion. Since then, President William Ruto of Kenya had warned in a closed AU session, what's happening in West Africa isn't just insurgency, it's orchestration. So now in this quiet room under the capital, one question hung heavier than the rest. If they had 48 hours, how many of those hours were still truly theirs? The intel chief opened another folder, inside images from a surveillance drone over a desert convoy. Trucks, covered, armed guards, children barely visible in cages behind metal slats. Stamped logos revealed fake NGO seals, registered in Malta, routed through Tunisia. Same route used by cartels in 2016, he muttered. Only now it's cleaner, legal on paper, death underneath. Who had built a system this complex, yet so invisible? One analyst pointed at the Mediterranean coast. Most of the sea exits are through Sabratha and Zuwara. Those two ports alone see hundreds of unregistered departures each week. The question is, how many bodies don't arrive? And if the ships carried children instead of weapons, who was paying and who was being paid? Captain Traoré stepped back from the table. He scanned the room. 12 men, all loyal, or so he hoped. Each carried a sidearm. Each now carried something heavier. "Seal the building," he said. "Strip all staff to skeleton crews. If anyone tries to leave, detain them. This operation is locked. We go quiet, or we fail." There was no applause, no salute, just the sound of heavy boots moving toward locked doors. Somewhere between the silence and the storm, a clock had started ticking. The convoy moved at 04:13, no headlights, just the pulse of infrared. 5 armored vehicles followed a dirt road cutting through scrubland 22 kilometers from the Mali border. The rain from hours before had dried to dust, but the tension hadn't. Captain Traoré sat in the lead vehicle, helmet on, eyes locked forward. His hand rested on the rifle across his chest, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He had read the dossier 3 times. One site, one chance. If they got it wrong, what would 172 people become by sunrise? The signal came, one blink of the overhead drone. All 5 vehicles stopped in perfect synchrony. A warehouse, corrugated steel, 2 floors backed into a slope, no signage, no lights. From the outside, nothing betrayed what it held. But the satellite heat map had shown clusters, too many for a storage site, too warm for machinery. Captain Traoré raised his fist. The team split, 2 flanking the right, 2 the left, the 5th holding rear perimeter. They breached silently. Flashbangs muted, doors cracked with bolt cutters, not charges. Inside, rows of shipping containers stood like silent tombs. Then came the sound, muffled knocking, metal trembling, a cough, a child's cry. "Over here," one officer whispered. Troops converged. Bolt cutters hissed, locks snapped. The first door opened. The stench hit first. Sweat, blood, fear. Then the sight, a tangle of limbs. People packed tighter than cargo, women clutching infants, boys no older than 7, old men barely breathing. One man's hands were tied behind his back with plastic cord. A girl had marks on her ankles, fresh, red, bleeding. How had no one seen this? Captain Traoré stepped forward. A child reached for him, hand shaking, voice like paper tearing. "Don't let them take me again, please." How many times had this plea been whispered in the dark, unanswered? They moved fast. One unit cleared the containers, 9 in total. Another triaged the victims, administering water, blankets, glucose shots. Some couldn't stand, others collapsed as soon as the doors opened. A medic looked up. Dehydration, infection. "Some won't last the night if we don't move now." "Evac ready?" Traoré asked. "Helos inbound, 15 minutes. He nodded. "We have 10. But fate had shorter plans. A crack, sharp, too close. Then the hiss of automatic gunfire. Bullets ricocheted off steel. "Contact, northeast wall." One of the flanking teams was under fire. Armed men, faces wrapped, rifles mounted with night sights. They didn't shout. They didn't charge. They aimed to suppress, to push the soldiers back into the containers. Who had warned them? Who knew the exact window to attack? Captain Traoré didn't retreat. He signaled forward. "Push them out. Contain the breach." His squad surged toward the source. Rounds tore through crates and concrete. One soldier was hit in the thigh. Another grazed across the arm. But the line held. Inside the warehouse, children screamed again. Women ducked, shielding babies beneath bodies. A smoke grenade was thrown. Then another. Visibility vanished. The enemy tried to flank, but they miscalculated. Captain Traoré had anticipated fog. He moved with precision, flanking right, catching 2 combatants unaware. A single burst from his rifle dropped them. No hesitation. "Suppress left, move forward." In 3 minutes, the warehouse exterior was under control. 2 attackers captured, 3 dead, 1 escaped into the scrub. Why did they fight with such desperation? Who were they protecting? What shipment was more important than 172 lives? "Secure the prisoners," Traoré said, eyes scanning the perimeter. "And check them. One of them had satellite gear." Indeed, one had a portable encrypted terminal stashed inside a side pouch. Military grade, not from Africa. Brands European, the tech analyst said. Spanish or German build. This isn't local militia. So, who funded this? In the final minutes before the helicopters arrived, the team finished extraction. Victims were triaged and loaded, container by container. A final count, 172 souls. Among them, 49 children, 72 women, 51 men. Of the children, 19 were under 5. Was this just one site? How many more lay in silence across the region? Captain Traoré stood at the door of the last container. The girl who had first spoken now sat wrapped in a blanket. Her head leaned against his arm. She didn't speak again. She didn't need to. The fire in his chest was already lit. The satellite images from the seized device lit up the briefing screen like a revelation. Coordinates, blurred but traceable, mapped to a site 70 kilometers east of Hombori, near the former phosphate mines in central Mali. No activity for years, at least not on paper. But the thermal logs told a different story. Vehicles entering at night, supply drops by drone. 3 hours earlier, one transmission had left that point, encrypted, short, then silence. Captain Traoré didn't wait. We move now. If they wipe those servers, we lose everything. But we're low on fuel, troops need rest, a logistics officer began. There's no rest while they're still moving people like cattle, Traoré said. Launch in 20. By 15:12, 2 helicopters lifted off from the extraction site. Ground teams rolled simultaneously, engines howling across hard clay. The terrain shifted fast, red dirt to rocky veins, then narrow gorges barely wide enough for armored wheels. The convoy thinned to single file. Onboard comms went dark. How many ambushes had been planned along these roads over the past decade? How many operations died in silence because intel came 5 minutes too late? A flash appeared overhead, then another. Searchlights from the Mi-171 helicopters painted zigzag beams through the dusk. "We've got motion," the pilot called in. "Convoy 4 vehicles heading north." Captain Traoré answered immediately. "Intercept, disable the lead, leave the rest boxed." As the chase tightened, the air grew electric. The fleeing convoy made no attempt to scatter. They were too coordinated, too clean. One vehicle peeled off, another slowed deliberately, a classic misdirection. Traoré's unit didn't bite. He pointed forward. "Keep on the lead, that's the one." Why risk 4 trucks, unless one of them carried something or someone they couldn't afford to lose? Shots cracked across the ridge. One of Traoré's vehicles returned fire, targeting the tires. The front truck spun, slamming into a boulder. Its side door burst open. Out stepped a man in a dark jacket, tall, calm, a briefcase in one hand, no visible weapon. But the guards around him were less composed. They fired wildly before retreating behind cover. "Hold fire," Traoré ordered. "I want him alive." The man didn't resist. He looked straight into the captain's eyes and smiled. "You're late," he said. Traoré didn't blink. "You're finished." The man's name wasn't in any database, but his briefcase told the story. Inside, 2 secure drives, biometric locked. One labeled South Route, the other Client Ledger. Attached, a handwritten code string and a single name underlined twice. Garde de l'Ombre, the Shadow Gatekeeper, one of the original architects of the Trans-Sahel slave corridors. Fluent in 4 languages, trained in Bern, alleged to have worked for a security consultancy in Madrid until 2018, then vanished. Now, he held the master codes to accounts moving over 30 million euros annually through Mauritius, Cyprus, and anonymous UAE trusts. How long had he hidden in plain sight? How many governments had looked the other way for regional stability? As tech officers began decryption, the clock ticked faster. The gatekeeper smiled again. "You don't have the keys." "We have your fingers," Traoré replied. "No torture will make them work." "I don't need torture. I need time." They returned to the mobile command unit just as the signal jumped. One of the drives pinged off an external server in Senegal. A backup protocol, a purge had begun. "Disconnect it." "Too late. 40% already gone." Traoré turned to the gatekeeper. "Override it, now." But the man laughed. "By now the rest of the chain is burning. Lagos, Tripoli, Marseille, it's over, Captain." Or was it? From a corner station, one of the younger analysts stood up. "I cloned the packets as they moved. We didn't stop them, we mirrored them." "What do you have?" Traoré asked. A full transaction log, names, codes, government IDs, even recipient accounts in Panama. How deep did this rot go? The captain looked at the man now sitting silently before him. For the first time, the gatekeeper's eyes dropped. Just a flicker. "You thought you were a ghost," Traoré said. "Turns out, even shadows leave footprints." The transmission was rerouted via N'Djamena to Interpol, and a backup copy encrypted into Ghana's cyber forensics unit under President Nana Akufo-Addo's direct oversight. As dawn broke over the Sahel, the grey mines faded into view, but the operation was far from over. At exactly 12 o'clock hours, Operation Falcon opened on 5 fronts across 3 regions. No warning, no delay, just decisive execution. In the northern transport district of Dori, 2 units closed in on an intercity bus terminal. The facade said Westline Travel. Inside, officers found a locked chamber beneath the ticket booth, filled with ledgers, transit logs, and over 70 forged identity papers. One document bore a custom stamp from Togo, issued in the name of a child born 3 months earlier in Kaya. How many children had been trafficked with official documents bearing official seals? In the port of Bobo Dioulasso, the warehouse marked African Port Sarel had no operational registration. Yet it processed crates listed as textile aid routed through Guinea-Bissau. Inside, mobile cold chambers, 4 of them, unplugged, empty. But residue tests confirmed traces of formalin, blood proteins, and multiple strains of DNA. In Koudougou, the safe house resembled a clinic. Beds in rows, injections pre-filled, walls lined with nutrition charts in French, Spanish, and Arabic. But no doctors, just armed guards subdued quickly. One laptop revealed footage, recorded interviews with potential clients from Dubai and Istanbul, inquiring about age, weight, and organ compatibility. Why had this been allowed to grow within reach of cities governed by African leadership? Simultaneously, a downtown office in Ouagadougou, branded as Amani Logistics, had its shutters blown open. Officers seized 6 computers, 2 safes, and a visitor log showing recent entries by individuals linked to business councils in France and Canada. Financial records pointed to an offshore triangle between Seychelles, Singapore, and Malta. One file, still open on screen, read, Consignment 348B, delivery pending, contact 4HR's post-transfer. Meanwhile, in Gawa, just outside the Gold Corridor, an abandoned factory turned holding site was stormed by a mobile unit. Hidden underground beneath stacked barrels, a steel door opened into darkness. They found 19 people, half unconscious, several with visible trauma. 3 had been reported missing by UNICEF last year. All bore tracking implants in their lower backs, manufactured by a biotech firm based in Tel Aviv. How did medical-grade trackers reach rural trafficking rings without political protection? The sweeps lasted 6 hours. Resistance was minimal, surprisingly so. But what the soldiers discovered wasn't just the human tragedy, it was the architecture of impunity. Captain Traoré moved between the teams, directing extractions, authorizing data seizures, confirming the chain of custody for international prosecutors. Every step had to be watertight. Any misstep in files could be deemed inadmissible. By 1807, preliminary tallies were confirmed. Total number of people rescued, 832,320 women, including at least 21 pregnant, 427 children, more than 90 under the age of 10, 85 men, most forced into unpaid mining labor across eastern Burkina Faso and border zones in southern Mali. One officer reported, some had been moved 6 times across 4 countries. None had ever seen the sun in weeks. In the media holding area, the first detainees were led past cameras, shackled, head down. Among them, 2 senior officers from Burkina Faso's intelligence division, a former deputy minister of trade, and a security contractor linked to a private military firm in Côte d'Ivoire. One detainee tried to hide his face, but the press recognized him instantly. He had once stood behind President Alassane Ouattara during a UN speech in Geneva. Now he stood handcuffed in front of the world. Should leaders like Captain Traoré be given full continental authority to dismantle these networks, or should Africa keep relying on external investigations? Share your view below, and if you believe in his mission, type Amen in the comments. The digital evidence, over 300 gigabytes, was handed off to 2 cybercrime analysts flown in from Ghana and Rwanda. They found patterns: real estate purchases in Nairobi, crypto transfers to Estonia, internal messages referring to extraction quotas and organ shelf life. What else had been commodified while the world debated statistics? At 2011, Captain Traoré appeared in front of the international press. He stood firm. No teleprompter, just conviction. This is not a war against crime. It is a war for dignity, he said. No man, woman, or child will be sold while I draw breath, not here, not anywhere. Behind him stood rows of freed children, wrapped in thermal blankets. Some clutched toys they'd been given, others just stared, silent, alert, untrusting. One journalist asked, "Captain, what next?" Traoré answered plainly, "We take them all down, every last buyer, every silent enabler. Every hand that signed a form pretending not to see. The camera shutter clicks grew louder, but he didn't flinch. Later that night, the African Union issued a statement backing the arrests. Niger's president called for a joint Pan-African tribunal. Ghana pledged to host a summit on cross-border trafficking within 30 days. In Dakar, a protest erupted outside the EU liaison office. Banners read, "No more blood trade, no more lies." Inside the Burkinabe capital, streets were quiet. But in homes, on screens, through whispers and prayers, a name echoed differently. Not just a soldier, not just a president, a sentinel. By the third morning, the files were sealed in diplomatic crates, guarded by 2 units of international observers, and flown directly to The Hague. Not just for storage, not for spectacle, but for justice. Inside them, thousands of pages, transaction records, biometrics, blood tests, receipts for lives sold, testimonies from children who had learned to speak in silence, images that no one should have ever needed to capture. Within 48 hours, the International Criminal Court officially opened a case under Article 7 of the Rome Statute, crimes against humanity through human trafficking and organ trade. It was one of the largest filings in African history, both in scope and in clarity. And yet, Captain Traoré didn't celebrate. He stood quietly beside the last container, now pried open, sunlight falling onto metal floors that had once held nothing but fear. Children stepped out slowly, some blinked into the light, others reached for the hands of soldiers they didn't know but somehow trusted. What had their dreams been before cages replaced cradles? Behind him, the press gathered. "This isn't a victory," he said. "It's a beginning." And it was. Because what if this operation had failed? What if the drive hadn't been cloned, the convoy missed, the girl not found? What else is still happening in silence, while our attention is elsewhere? Can a continent truly rise if its children disappear beneath its own soil? This story isn't just about one man. It's not only about a network destroyed or hundreds rescued. It's about a continent declaring, "We will not look away again." Captain Traoré's image, standing firm amid metal ruins and blinking children, has since traveled across platforms, whispered in mosques and churches, shared on WhatsApp groups from Atlanta to Accra. His words echo, "No one, not minister nor merchant, has the right to sell a human life." What will we do with this echo? Will we build walls of silence again or bridges of outrage? What does this story awaken in you? Does it remind you of your ancestors' strength, your family's endurance, your identity as an African in a world that forgot your value too many times? Share your reflections below, speak their names, and if you believe in a new future for our people, comment, "Africa Rise." Just those 2 words. Let them flood the comments like a river long denied its flow. If this moved you even a little, please press like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell. It helps this truth reach further. We don't need $1 billion. We just need 1 billion hearts. Share this story with your family chat, your WhatsApp groups, your church circle. Let the world know Burkina Faso is no longer bowing. Chofi Khumkon Imlang. And if you want to understand the full scope of how this operation unfolded, from encrypted codes in Senegal to the betrayal in Côte d'Ivoire, watch the next episode. It's waiting. So are the truths it still holds. Thank you for standing with us. Thank you for standing with Chofi. We'll see you soon. Stay proud, stay awake, stay with us.